Postnatal preparation and support is something which is very close to my heart. I really struggled postnatally when I had my first child, my daughter, in 2017. And even though I was lucky enough to have a really good support system of family and friends around me, I still really found it difficult. Part of that was because I hadn't prepared myself for those challenges that I faced, and I had only thought as far as the birth. And I also found that when I was looking for support, there didn't seem to be enough support in Aberdeen providing emotional support for mental health and well-being in that postnatal period. And this is one of the areas that a postnatal doula can help support you with. It's still a fairly unknown role, and you might not have even heard of it before. I only recently found out about these things myself, having gone through all of those challenges. So if you imagine a birth doula is a support and a companion through birth, a postnatal doula is the exact same but postnatally. So they can offer advice which is evidence-based on recovery, infant feeding, help support around the house or with other children, and also signpost you to further services. I like to kind of think of it as Mary Poppins, but for mums. So, as I just mentioned, often during pregnancy, we focus on antenatal preparation and we prepare only for birth and as far as birth, which of course is incredibly important, but most people forget to think about that postnatal transition, which can be just as life-changing and, as challenging at times. So it's such an important transition. And if this is your first baby, you may not know what to expect. And like me back in 2017, you may have not thought beyond the birth of your baby. Or if this is your second baby, you might not know how you're going to juggle more than one child or divide your time and attention, especially when you're in that newborn phase. I personally am a mummy to two little ones, so I know how you might be feeling. You might be feeling excited, but you also might be feeling impatient to meet your new one. You might be feeling anxious. And that's why it's really important to set some time aside while you're still pregnant to think about what to expect when you're in that postnatal baby bubble. Now, if you're watching this video and you are either very close to your due date or you've already given birth and you have your baby in your arms, then don't worry about that. There is plenty of time to put these support techniques into place. And really the most important thing is that you're taking time to figure out what you need, what you might need to put in place to help you through that journey. So firstly, I wanted to speak to you about the fourth trimester. That may be a term that you've heard of. Basically, the fourth trimester is a term used to describe that time post-birth, and it's normally up till about 12 weeks. So your baby is learning to adjust to a completely new environment, which comes with new sensations, new experiences, and at the same time, you're learning to adjust to a completely new family dynamic. You may have gone from being an independent person with no dependents to suddenly having a baby which is fully dependent on you and your partner. And that can be a real time of change and learning. I think some people think as soon as you have a baby in your arms, you're already a mother. And to some extent that is true, but becoming a mother or father doesn't happen overnight. You have to grow into the process. And that happens as you and your baby learn to understand each other and you develop that relationship. So while you're in this transition, you might have a little bit of sleep deprivation. Babies don't tend to know when they're supposed to sleep. They don't know the difference between night and day. So you may be tired and your brain might be a bit foggy, and it's sometimes hard to focus on what support you might need or where you might be able to find it. So that's why it's really important to think of the possibilities before you're in that bubble, in that foggy early motherhood haze. So during the first trimester, your baby still actually believes that it's in the womb. So it's going to be really dependent on you. It's going to need closeness, it's going to need warmth, that feeling of security, and possibly enclosure. So things that can help you during this time are making that baby feel like it's still in the womb. So you might want to use white noise, or you might want to try swaddling for sleep. And baby wearing can also be a great way to allow your baby to feel safe and secure, but also give you more mobility, and also give you the use of both your hands. Don't underestimate the importance of being able to move and get yourself a drink or a snack. And, something simple like that can be an act of self-care. Which leads me on to the next thing that I'd like to talk about, and that is the concept of self-care. There's kind of a cliche at the moment of you can't pour from an empty cup, and that is so true. You have to make sure you're looking after yourself so that you are able to look after your little one. Something really simple like having a cup of tea or just a moment to yourself can be self-care. So my advice is to be realistic about what self-care means to you. It can be something really simple, and it can take 10 seconds, it can take 1 minute or 5 minutes. And the most important thing to remember about self-care is that it's doing something that makes you feel calm, makes you feel centered, or makes you feel happy. And it might be something like listening to a song which makes you feel happy, having a little dance around your kitchen, or maybe it will be calling someone that you love, and all of these things are going to boost your oxytocin and your endorphin levels. And these are all your happy hormones. And they'll lift your mood and lift your energy if you're feeling tired, which we often do in those early days of having a baby. Self-care might be something really simple, like taking a nice, slow, calm breath, just centering yourself and bringing yourself back to that present moment. In those early days, it can be really overwhelming, and your brain might become busy, might be overloaded with information, questions, tasks, but just allow yourself a moment to breathe. Take a long, slow, deep breath, and just turn your attention towards yourself, turn your attention towards how you're feeling, and turn your attention towards your baby. And just allow that busy part of your mind to quieten, and just be in the moment. And it's as simple as that sometimes. Affirmations are another simple and effective tool for motherhood or parenting. You may have learned to use affirmations for birth, but they can be just as effective for parenting. If you feel like you might be doubting yourself, then just stop and think of all the amazing things you're achieving with your baby. Baby's fed, baby is washed, baby is dressed, and just tell yourself, I am a wonderful mother. Because it means so much when you say it to yourself. Often other people say these things to us, but it has more strength when it comes from inside yourself. Another great time to use affirmations is if you've been having a challenging day. Maybe you've been trying different things with your baby, maybe they're a bit unsettled. So just stop and notice your feelings, and just check in with yourself and tell yourself, I'm still learning and I'm still growing into motherhood. There's no such thing as a perfect mum, but there are hundreds of ways to be a good mum. And you need to remind yourself of all the great things that you're doing. So just take that time now to think about what you may need postnatally. You may have heard of the term baby brain or mummy brain, and that's a colloquial term to sum up that fogginess of new motherhood. But in actual fact, there's scientific evidence to back this term up. When you have a new baby, your brain goes through a transition of neuroplasticity, and that's where you're learning loads of new skills, and your brain is reprioritizing what skills or information you need, and those are often things that are related to your baby, and it will probably forget things that are not so important to your baby and helping that baby to thrive. So it goes through a decluttering process. So be kind to yourself when you forget things that you would normally remember, because it is completely normal and you're just doing what is natural to you. So this is why I personally offer a postnatal preparation class, which is taken antenatally at around 36 to 40 weeks gestation. And in that class, it offers you lots of ways to prepare for motherhood. And it just allows you to think about in advance any possible barriers or challenges that you might face in the early days and weeks of motherhood, because it is a learning process. So, one of the ways that you might want to help support yourself is to learn and practice mindfulness. So, it just allows you to be really present in the moment. Those early days go past so quickly. I know that's another cliche, but when you're in it, the days pass by so quickly. So, a great time to practice mindfulness might be during feeding. Whether that's breastfeeding or bottle feeding, just take that time to kind of do a body scan over your baby and just take in all that amazing, little body that you've created. And a technique that also goes really nicely hand in hand with mindfulness is self-hypnosis, which again, some of you may have used for preparation for birth, but is also really great for when you become a mother. Self-hypnosis allows you to reframe situations. So in those overwhelming situations, you can turn them around and view them more positively, and you can change your mindset into a positive one. If there's anything you want to know more about, feel free to contact me. I'm always here if anyone's got any questions, and I love to support people. A really great way to prepare for motherhood is possibly to write yourself a plan. And you might want to think of physical, emotional, or practical barriers that you might encounter in those early days. And just allowing yourself to think about those possible barriers allows you time to come up with solutions to those barriers as well. And in that plan, you might even want to write about your preferences of how you want to parent. And now I say preferences because, when this baby comes and they're their own little being, they sometimes have their own ideas about things. So, preferences is more flexible in a plan, and it allows you to know that you've got choices and that you've got options, and you're prepared for a different number of scenarios. Sometimes we expect one thing in our head and different things happen, and that's just part of life, and it's great to be prepared for all of those eventualities. You also might want to look into support groups now. So antenatally, have a think about what support groups are out there. There's a great support group offered by the NCT currently. They've got an early years group, runs on a Thursday via Zoom, and that's run by a breastfeeding counsellor. So that's another great source of support if you want to breastfeed and you're looking for a knowledgeable person to help you with that. Once face-to-face groups start up, baby groups are a great way to get out and socialise with other mums or dads who they're going through the same experiences as yourself. And you might have heard of the term mum tribe, but I know personally that I benefited so much from having other mums around me going through those same situations, and just knowing that you're not alone can be a huge source of support in those early days. And it can just help you to feel more confident in your motherhood journey. At the moment, we're still finding our way through COVID restrictions, but there are great support groups on Facebook, such as Mums in Aberdeen and Shire, and you can get great advice from other mums. And it's even just a nice place to vent or, air concerns or worries. Hopefully, in the near future, we'll get back to things like stay and play sessions. And these are also a great place to talk and to listen to others' shared experiences. These are also often in local church centres, and having something local can be so simple and supportive, because sometimes in those early days it can be, a bit of an anxious trip if you're going far from home. So having something close to home helps you to get out and about. And while you're thinking of those different avenues of support, you might want to think about what people you have in your life just now and what skills they can offer you in support. So you might have a friend that makes you laugh who's going to cheer you up, or you might have a friend who's a great cook and they can, batch cook meals for you, or you might have a friend who's just a really great listener and who's just going to support you emotionally.